mental well-being is something meaningful to do, someone to love, something to have in the future.
Something to look forward to,
Yes.
purpose.
Yes.
To be honest, I find it difficult because there is a private life and there's a work life, and those two interact in well-being. So it's also a bit of a journey within the organization. To what extent do you mix up both?
Setting boundaries has become increasingly difficult. You get information input all the time.
It's also embracing that uniqueness of yourself and also recognizing the uniqueness of others and still have that unified feeling.
Hello and a warm welcome to all our listeners tuning in to our very first episode of OpenUp at the Workplace. I'm Jesper and I'm excited to be your host today as we embark on this journey exploring all aspects of mental well-being in the workplace. At OpenUp, we collaborate with organizations worldwide, empowering them to foster a resilient workforce. We do so by offering a platform where employees can engage, learn, and grow in all aspects of their mental well-being. And through this podcast, we're excited to share these valuable learnings that we've already learned and that we're still learning. So every month, we'll bring you a new episode filled with insights and real-life stories from leaders and experts in psychology, business, HR, and people management. Our episodes are meant to inspire and provide practical takeaways. And joining us for each episode is OpenUp's founder and healthcare psychologist, Gijs Coppens. Welcome, Gijs. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here and great to start this podcast.
How are you feeling? First episode?
I'm feeling good. I'm looking forward to it. And I definitely already feel that we will enjoy the conversation.
Any expectations of these episodes?
No, I think it's very important to do this and to develop, I would say, meaning also in what we do every day. So I really value a meaningful conversation, and that's what I also expect of today. So I think we will make that happen together.
I think we're all looking forward to that. As it is our first episode, Gijs, I want to ask you one question before we introduce our guest, and that is, you're a psychologist. How would you describe what mental well-being means as a psychologist? It's a word used often, but what does it actually mean to you, at least?
Well, years ago, I read somewhere what is mental well-being, and it's something meaningful to do in everyday life. So it has to do with doing something you find meaningful, you find interesting. And then it's also about someone to love. So it has to do with people around you in the workplace, people around you at home, friends, family. So it is about someone to love. And then the third aspect of mental well-being for me would be something to hope for, something to strive for. So something in the future that you can long to, that has to do with optimism and hope. So I would say that my short answer is mental well-being is something meaningful to do, someone to love, and something to have in the future. Something to have in the future.
Something to look forward to.
Yes.
Purpose.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Well, in today's episode, our focus is on the importance of mental well-being at the workplace. We will discuss the significance of creating a workplace that's safe, inclusive, and understanding to enable everyone to perform at their best. So that's what we're going to focus on. Now, before I introduce our guest, a quick reminder. Please subscribe to our podcast and share it with your colleagues and friends. Your engagement and feedback are very valuable to us to make sure that we can shape our content further. So let's not wait any longer and introduce today's guest. Today's guest is a member of the management board at PwC, the Netherlands, and the current chair of the Tax and Legal Board. Additionally, she serves as a board member of the Human Rights Watch Netherlands and impacts her wisdom as a speaker at the Maastricht University, inspiring the next generation of leaders. With her extensive experience in corporate governance, incentive design and reward strategies, she's an advocate for the critical role of culture and leadership in developing high-performing, ethical organizations. Her contributions have resulted in her winning the Workplace Pride Role Model Award in 2023. Welcome to the podcast, Janet Visbeen.
Yeah, it sounds like a eulogy.
That's a lot. You've done a lot already.
Yeah.
Sounds like I'm really interested in learning more on the award. We're gonna touch on that a little bit later. What you've done to get that prize. But before we kickstart the conversation with Gijs as well, I want to see if we can get to know you a little bit better. And I want to do that in a format where we have 10 different questions. There's a number in front of every question. So I'm going to ask you to name a number, and then there's a question attached to that. And hopefully that's a way to get to know you a little bit better before we dive into the conversation.
Okay, well, I always have lucky numbers, so I'll go for 8.
8. Number 8. Let's see. Oh, that's a good one. If you could have any superpower to boost your mental well-being, what would it be?
To be able to affect time, the time continuum.
And why do you say that?
Because in all these years I've been working, there's not one day that I do not overestimate what I can do. So if I could affect the time continuum, that would be a great superpower.
Yeah.
I was also late for this podcast, so I think those type of things that I can rewind and be on time and have the time to think through things. I think that will be a superpower that will be extremely helpful.
Gives you less stress, less time pressure.
Yeah, for my well-being. I think if I would have other superpowers, I would feel stressed to help other people, etc. This one's for my own well-being would be a good one.
Exactly. Well, let's do one more number before we dive into the conversation.
3.
3. Another good one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received about maintaining your own mental well-being?
The best piece of advice. I mostly get that from my wife, who just says, okay, what you do is totally irrelevant. And sort of makes you gives you the feeling you're an ant on the planet, more or less. And at the same time, she always stresses to me that as we are sitting here, working at PwC, all highly educated people living in the Netherlands, that you are like the 1% of the world population in terms of where you are, your chances, etc. So the advice is, if you mock it up, shame on you. And if you're in this 1%, so privileged, etc., if you're doing stuff you don't like, shame on you. And the other one, being that 1%, you have a responsibility to the other 99%. So that, I think, that advice is humbling, but also appealing, perhaps, as was said, for part of well-being, also to have that purpose.
Yes.
So I think that's the best advice that I've received.
Nice.
On a daily basis still.
Yeah. No, I think we'll touch more on that, maybe even during today's episodes, but also on future episodes on the purpose, that it's so important. So thank you for that. I want to kick off with the topic of mental well-being in general. A study of Harvard Business Review has shown that 60 to 75% of people are dealing with daily mental well-being challenges. That's a lot of people. Also, in the prepping of this episode and what current challenges are for PwC, we also heard back that also at PwC, helping employees to stay resilient, to have them be able to make time to work on their well-being, and to have a healthy work-life balance, to maintain a good mental well-being is a challenge. Can you tell a little bit about those challenges at PwC?
I can. I don't have a PhD in psychology, so it's a little bit experience-based. Mm-hmm. But we talk a lot with our all generations within our firm on the challenges that they have, and it's in most cases a combination of the private life. So, for instance, a lot of students who join us do have a lot of student debt, etc., and that raises all sorts of concerns. Or they have, they don't know how they can get housing, those type of things. So those concerns which lie beyond your responsibility as an employer do affect what people take to the workplace. So we can't offer a solution, but we can offer a listening ear and feel that they can have the understanding if they have no concerns on that aspect. The other one is, at PwC, I mean, we are very much focused on our clients. We want to bring the best solutions, etc. And that's not always a 9-to-5 job. The average age within our firm is also relatively young, so it's sort of mid-30s. That's when most people have children, etc. Now, having children myself, sometimes it's a real stretch and a balancing act on how do you want to play Champions League in your work, and at the same time want to be the best mom there is, and combining those two is, that is an almost impossible task. And that's what we get back from our staff, is that they need to feel comfortable to balance that. And one time it will be more focused on PwC, and the other time it will be more focused on their home life. And as an employer, we try to be, of course, we have our all our policies, etc. But a lot of it, because we work in relatively small teams, also comes down to the group dynamics, leadership, those type of things, that people really feel safe, appreciated, recognized for what they do, so that they can create that room for itself. And you asked the question to Gijs, what is well-being, and I thought, if I get that question, what would I answer? And I was thinking, for me, it's about feeling empowered and also feeling powerful, sort of energy level. And that's what I see a lot within PwC, is that people do not always feel empowered because they come in, they're young and they have more experienced colleagues, and they do not always. So we're trying to help them to feel more empowered and take their own responsibility, and helping them with that, but also to be powerful. So that's a sort of energy balance. And the simplest way I can word it, if I leave the house in the morning and one of my kids is sick, or I have a row with my partner, that affects my performance when I come to the job. And we all have these things, so you can't really preclude that. But if that's in balance, you will also be more successful and empowered in your job. To be honest, I find it difficult because there is a private life and there's a work life, and those two interact in well-being. So it's also a bit of a journey within the organization. To what extent do you mix up both?
And I'm really curious to dive a little bit more into what PwC does to help and support the employees. But before we do that, Gijs, maybe you can shine some light on how is mental well-being developed over the years when it comes to the workplace, the private and work life, and how that intertwines. What have you seen also in the consultation room, but also as a founder of OpenUp?
I think we've seen this great movement, I would say, to make it more normal to talk about mental well-being. I think we still have a lot of work to do. But I think in maybe 20 years ago, it was not really a topic that you discussed openly at the workplace. And everyone wants to play Champions League, especially among knowledge workers. But how to stay fit in that Champions League play was not necessarily being made explicit. So some people did that and they did the right things, maybe intuitively, and some other people had difficulties to catch up. And I think the developments of recent years will really bring that full workforce to a next level. That's at least what I would foresee, because it gets more and more normal to talk about work-life balance, meaning the meaning of the work that you do, the career that you would like to have, what is a balanced life for you, when is it good enough. So I think we're making those themes explicit now in society, and that's new and that's good.
Do you recognize that, I think?
I do, and I mean the analogy with the Champions League. I'm a bit of a sports buff, so I like to use those sports analogies. But I think well-being in a high-performance environment sometimes can feel like, you're going to sit on your yoga mat and not be engaged with work. I think what we are turning around, if you take a sports analogy, if you look at soccer and you look at Ronaldo and Messi, they're perhaps the greatest soccer players in these times, but they're also the least injured players, and that's where their importance in the team comes. So it's not just, it's also making sure you take care of yourself so you can contribute to the team. And so I really would like to stress that well-being is not something because new generations have more focus on this, but if you want to have a high-performing team, well-being is a prerogative in order to be that well-performing team.
And what can you do, maybe Gijs, you can start there, what can you do to create an environment where people talk about well-being?
Yeah, my first answer is always it starts with leadership. So it starts with giving the right example. So leaders that are comfortable with having these conversations are very vital to an organization. And so you're not only searching for leaders that can set the example on the task level, on what you need to deliver in terms of output, but also you're searching for leaders that have this capacity for this meaningful conversation, and that also have this ability to look after the behavior that is shown. And so what's connected to that behavior? What kind of thinking, what kind of feeling, what kind of drive, what kind of needs? And of course, that's something you can develop in leaders. You should develop that capacity, that skill. But you also, I would say, search for leaders that have that naturally also a little bit in them to have that conversation. That would be my first starting point in leadership. And then everything will follow that meaningful conversation in the team.
How does PwC look at that? The role of leadership?
The role of leadership, I mean, it's a monkey see, monkey do. So the role of leadership is very important, especially with these young people coming in. So if you have people who work for a longer period, you have a more family type of environment. But we're also an organization who loves their training and skills, etc. So I think it's both. By spending a lot of time also in your development programs, it also demonstrates that we find it important as leadership that people spend time to this. At the same time, you have some people who don't need the training because they have the knack for it. They are interested in their staff and they have the capacity to have those conversations. And there are people who are who have more difficulties with this. And we try to make sure that we don't have a one-size-fits-all. So the luxury we have with this big organization is that if you have some people already great at this, we want to put them in the position to also bring that to the teams. And the people who may be less oriented, but perhaps more finance-focused or, I don't know, more focused on clients, to empower those to bring the best out of them. So not, in Dutch we would say, create the sheep with the 5 legs, but make sure that people thrive in what they do and then also affect the communities. And next to that, of course, it's something that a culture is a difficult animal. And the policies that you make and the rigor that you put in there, it's not the answer, but it does create the safeguards that you are moving along that line.
And maybe that's a nice bridge to something that I know you've done at PwC is one of the first to input some of these inclusive environments or putting things in place. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. I&D for us, so inclusion and diversity is a lifeline. The business we are in is bringing different lenses to our clients to help them become more successful. That's quite a task if you don't have a diverse and inclusive environment within your organization. So we have various programs which vary from mentorship programs to our well-being sessions on various topics. We have networks within our organization from our connected cultures to our Shine network, which is our queer network, etc. Just to make sure that people feel represented, seen, and to create that inclusiveness. And what I'm really proud of is that these networks also interconnect, because otherwise you're just creating small pools of people who are not diverse by itself. So it's more about where do we find each other. That's also why we seek to celebrate a diversity of holidays, whether it's Diwali or whether it's Christmas, etc., to make sure that we connect. And in that way, we seek as an organization to touch society at large a little bit and makes people feel more inclusive. But nothing is as strong, whatever we organize as an organization, nothing is as impactful as actually being seen in your team, feel that you have a long-lasting relationship with your employer who has your interests at heart. That's my personal experience. So again, making time also to have those conversations and guide people in that, I think, is even most impactful.
And you said something important there to also have these networks connect to each other. What are things that you do to make them connect? It's easier said than done, of course.
Well, there are certain challenges that they pick up together. So like we have a young PwC network that then reach out to some of the other networks to do cabaret, for instance, or things like that. It's really about making sure that we recognize the best in each other and look at the elements that tie us together rather than the things that set us aside. At the same time, I mean, being yourself and bringing something unique yourself to the table is also for anybody who is in a high knowledge working or in the consulting business important, because otherwise, what is the relevance of having you at the table? So it's also embracing that uniqueness of yourself and also recognizing the uniqueness of others and still have that unified feeling. So yeah, we do a lot. We spend a lot of time in it, but at the same time, it's about having those. It's about having those conversations and showing those leadership behaviors.
I really like what you're saying about everyone brings his or her own uniqueness to the table, but there is also something that unites the group that is maybe similar in all people in the company, or that they all find equally important, like values or.
Well, and that's really, I mean, we have a purpose, and that purpose needs to hit home with you. So if you want to be here, our purpose is solving important problems, and you really want to feel that relevance, that you need to be relevant. I think one of the things that we've been doing the last 2 years is, apart from having those conversations, is really tying it into business more. So we have the slogan, be well, work well. Because when we started off on this well-being journey, we're being, of course, we had to learn as well. So we started off with putting particular focus on the well-being subject. We created well-being budgets for everybody to spend for what is important to them, because that's different for everybody. But it was still a little bit on the side of the business. And I think to be truly successful, again, with my analogy with sports, the understanding that it's not something as a way of getting young people to work at PwC as a sort of a perk that, we also have a well-being budget and we do a lot of well-being. It's really embedding the understanding in leadership and in the teams and in every individual that you cannot be the best in what you do and contribute what we want you to contribute if your well-being is not in order. So it's connecting the business and the need for well-being with each other. Also understanding that well-being is also largely connected to your private environment. But I think that has made a change, especially the last 2 years, which also makes it easier to have those discussions in the team, because then it's a common interest. If somebody is at home because he or she has a difficult circumstance at home, of course there's the personal interest in the individual, but you want the individual to come back and be part of the team again, and I think that has made a big change.
We were having discussions with Albert Heijn, and I was impressed by the statistic that 20% of the younger generation works somewhere in their life for Albert Heijn. So that's really impressive. So
that's the supermarket.
Supermarkets. And then Albert Heijn has this goal to learn these young people how to work, how to show up at time, how to finish an assignment, how to deal with your manager, how to deal with your colleagues. And that's very purposeful to me. They pick up young people, 14 years old, and they teach them how to work. And I think with well-being and more knowledge-driven companies, we also need to teach again, in a way, how to do this, how to incorporate this, how to integrate this in this life that has become so fast and so much dense with information. So I can fully echo what you're saying. And is that also what you notice, that we need to kind of reinvent ourselves again?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the team I work with on human capital, as we call it within PwC, is busy with all the time, because the pressures that build on our people because of family ties, because of social media, because of the world at large. So people can be really disturbed about all the uncertainties and mishaps that are going in the world today. May mean is that we also have to create more individualized opportunities. So an example is that when you become at a certain level, then in 3 years you make your next promotion to another level. That's quite common with most organizations, but that can build pressure, because if you're not there in the 3 years, then is something wrong with you, or are you not successful in your job, etc. Whilst there may be elements at your home life, you may have a parent who's sick or a child who's sick, or you may have a child, where all sorts of things may happening there. So we're really looking into how can we create more differentiated career paths so that people feel more comfortable and not you're successful or you're not successful, which, those are small elements, but that's what we're looking into. And it's also the fail fast principle, because I don't have the answer to all of these things, especially because it's also so individually based. So we want to create flexibility and try things and see whether they resonate or not. And if they don't, we move on and we try something else. But that dynamic between tweaking to the individual and being part of the bigger group, because you need both, that's a very interesting dynamic. But I think we are progressing along that line.
Maybe to grab back to the role of leadership a little bit, and then I'd like to ask you a question, Gijs. I mean, it's a statistic you also shared a few times already, but for 69% of people, their managers have the greatest impact on their mental well-being. That's on par with the impact that their partner has on their mental well-being. And that's a very interesting statistic, because you spend a lot of time at work. I think that's also what this statistic says. Mm-hmm. So the leadership has a very important role to play. I'd like to ask the question for all the leaders, the people leaders out there, what does it, we've spoken about different needs for every individual. So that also means that you need to create an environment where you can allow people to share and feel safe enough to talk about their needs. What does it actually mean for employees or for people in general to feel safe and understood?
First of all, about leaders, there's a lot on shoulders of leaders. So I also talk a lot about leadership, but all these leaders need to do a lot of things for the organization. And if you talk about building a safe environment, then I think that awareness that everyone is unique, has their own individual needs and wishes, and wants to be heard on those needs. And at the same time, also the awareness that we all are also united. I think that's a very important distinction. So if you can show people that you understand that balance, that you want to really understand them individually, and that you also want to see how you can get them effective in the group as a whole that unites us. I think if that's kind of the balance you search for as a leader with the individuals in your team, and you do that, of course, in the right sensitive way. So taking the time for that, taking the time also for that conversation. So not only talk about the tasks, but also how someone is doing, what someone would like to achieve, where someone wants to go to in 2 or 3 years from now in terms of career. So if you have that sensitivity and develop that sensitivity as a leader, I think you will do great in building up this safe environment.
I'd like to, because this is very interesting to me, because we're at the verge of introducing a new leadership framework within PwC. And that has 2 elements that you address. One is the leadership framework. You think about people in management roles, but this is framed as everybody being a leader. Your accountability, the envelope of your accountability may differ, but you are in the lead, and therefore you are a leader. And it moves away from tasks and competencies in terms of your development, and it's all about your behaviors. Because at the end of the day, we feel that, we have a purpose, we have a strategy that gives us focus in what we do, but and our values underpin how we behave. But those behaviors, at the end of the day, are the glue if you want to bring everything together. And it's interesting because there are about 30 behaviors that we want people to demonstrate. Where we also acknowledge that we do not demonstrate them all. I looked at it, I think I have 4 where I feel very comfortable. The other 26, I think, oh God, I need to step up. But just having those discussions. So, for instance, one of those behaviors is I bring positive energy. And I originate from Rotterdam, so I can be quite glass half full or half empty, I should say. So I already get back from my team, Janet, bring positive energy. But simple to have that discussion, saying, perhaps my ambition is getting in my way. I need to be more, lighten up a little bit, etc. But those 30 behaviors, I mean, we did a soft launch, as they call it, but we're underpinning it the next year with also changes to our HC policies, etc., and our promotion cycles. I think that will be important. Also from the well-being perspective, because it empowers people. Everybody's a leader, so everybody is supposed to act in accordance, not meet those behavioral, but take them on and challenge yourself whether you are actually demonstrating those behaviors. And I think it's fitting in the new environment where actually the tasks and what you know, also with Gen AI, etc., become less relevant. It's more about who you are and what your take on the world is, etc.
To touch on something both of you have now mentioned, leaders, there's also expected a lot of leaders, a lot on the shoulders of leaders, also from non-leaders, or how you say it, everybody's a leader.
Everybody's a leader.
Janet, if somebody who has a very busy agenda and also has to manage people comes up to you and asks the question, listen, like, how do I make the time, or what can I do to make time for my team to make them feel understood and safe? And what is something you would answer, or a tip that you would give them?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the core competency of a leader is to help others succeed. So if you're too busy because you're dealing with your own things, then you're doing something wrong. It's almost like curling. You need to pave the way for the others to be successful and thrive. So it goes back to sort of get your priorities straight. That's the first one, because as a leader, this is one of your core tasks, if you want, or core competencies. The second one is that, especially in our organization, which is a partnership, the reason why you are in a leadership role is purely by the people who want to work for you. So and perhaps that's the humbling part. If you truly understand that, you always have the time to do these things. And at the end of the day, there's another advice what I normally give, which I also challenge myself. We actually had our CEO survey where we ask CEOs how they think about how they spend their time. And I think I'm in agreement with those CEOs. 40% of what we do, somebody else could have done as well. So if you look at that uniqueness and what you bring to the table, and if you're really honest and you look at your agenda for the day, do you really need to do all those things? Are you making the impact that you would want to be making, or can you mandate somebody else and delegate that 40% to create that time to go back to your core task as a leader, making sure that the people around you can thrive?
And for me, it's also the realization that you will never have time enough, so that you're constantly also doing that enabling of other people and being sensitive to them. And it can also be a 2 or 3 minutes moment that you have with someone that has impact on that level. So at least that gives me some sort of a relaxation that you can be good enough as a leader in doing this. A bit the same as a parent, you want to be good enough at least. By understanding you can also do it throughout the day. So yes, you want to maybe have your one-on-ones, you want to maybe have these meaningful conversations on development every month, for instance, really structured and maybe a bit formalized sometimes. But also in that informal circuitry, you're active all the time.
And I think perhaps leaders do not always, let's not talk, I do not always realize how impactful small things are. So if you, just a simple note, so how did that pitch go with the client X, or did your wife recover from COVID, or whatever, that those small attention points which are in your head, but you do not always put out there, by simply taking that one less than a minute, with Gen AI even 10 seconds to write that email, makes a big difference. So when you talked about inclusion and diversity, we have a lot of programs, and it's very important that we focus on that. But now and then, just to drink a cup of coffee with a talent that you think, okay, maybe struggling or may not be aware that he or she is considered a talent is perhaps even more impactful. So, but again, the superpower of time continuum would also help.
Yeah, exactly. We should all have that superpower. Hey, and then I think another challenge that maybe people leaders see is that people are not making the time to work on their mental well-being. What would you say there, Gijs? How could you make time to work on your mental well-being?
Then I would say that's really about educating and setting boundaries. So I think setting boundaries has become increasingly difficult. We get information input all the time. It's also very difficult not to be distracted, I would say, by, for instance, your smartphone. Our smartphones are now on silent mode. I really like that. But a lot of people also in meetings are still on their smartphone, for instance. You also see that with politicians on the television, in the parliament, for instance. And it's distracting in a way. So I think learning how to concentrate, learning how to switch from one task to another, learning how to be offline. Those are skills that we need to train. We need to train that again because technology is so dominant nowadays that it's normal to be distracted. So for me, it starts with setting boundaries and also educating on how to do that and practicing that.
Are there things at PwC that you implemented to help employees set boundaries?
You want the honest answer, or the reason why I said yes, of course we have things in place, but at the same time we are very demanding clients. So now and then those boundaries are vague and should be tailored to the individual needs. So for instance, smartphone, I agree, but at the same time for me it also gives me the confidence to now and then check to make sure I'm still on top of my game. So while somebody else might find that very disturbing, etc. So it's about creating that room to make your own boundaries. So you it's quite typical if you receive an email that you get an email back saying, okay, I've received your email, but that doesn't mean I can respond within a certain time, etc. We're very wary as leadership that we do not start emailing in the weekends and in the evenings, because to be honest, that those are the moments that your mind is wondering, thinking, oh, we could do this, we could do that, and then you're bombarding your staff with all sorts of emails, giving them the chip on the shoulder. I'll think, oh, do I need to do something? But does it go right all the time? No, it doesn't. I mean, that's a bit the high-paced environment. What I also find important, two things, is that people see that as their own responsibility, but also that they ask for help if they can't figure it out alone anymore.
Asking for help, I think, is a big one. And what you're not saying not to have those thoughts and put them on paper in the evening, but there's a lot of toolings out there. They can also schedule meals to go out on Monday morning again instead of in the weekend or in the evening, of course. And we've spoken about generative AI a little bit here and there as well already. What do you think is going to be the impact of that on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a positive. It's a bit contradictory saying I was from Rotterdam, but on Gen AI I'm quite positive because it opens up time. So in a country where we have a productivity issue to grow, I think for our future prosperity, which is also needed to climate transition, etc. I think it's really important, and I think it's a positive thing. At the same time, I had a meeting this morning with our Workers' Council. I'm also aware that there are concerns. So we do these studies amongst young professionals, what they prefer most in terms of their employment conditions, etc., both within our organization, but also with other organizations and with universities. And the last year and a half, we've seen the needle move from flexibility, purpose, etc., to job guarantee, minimum income levels, etc. So the world is changing. So I think positive stance, but also do not close the eyes for the pressures it also gives for people who are now starting out in the labor market or are starting out within your company with a lot of young people who really ask questions like, am I going to be replaced? What is my career look like? Who are looking a lot for certainty, where we as leaders say, no, certainty is out of the window. You should be flexible and agile and those type of things. Yeah, you need to instill confidence in your staff that we may not know where the road is going to bring us, but we're doing this together. And we will equip you and train you and learn you the stuff you need to be on that road. And at the same time, you have your own responsibility there. So positive, but keep on engaging with the different communities, because there can be fears of future prosperity.
And what I really also see is that, of course, as human beings, we like that flexibility to some extent. We can deal with uncertainty, but we also need that certainty. So it's always, and of course, I think older generations have a bit more of certainty. They have their home in place. They already are, let's say, at 70% of their pension build up. They know what kind of career they have already had and what they can expect in the coming years. And I think for the newer generation, so much things are uncertain. So it would be great if we can provide them with, let's say, a healthy level of certainty, so that they can digest all the uncertain movements, like also the introduction of AI. And in terms of AI, I think what we will really need to discover is what will be typically something that human beings will continue to do in every profession. And that's a challenge, of course. We need to think about what's typically for human beings. So in our own practice as a psychologist, I'm pretty sure that this feeling in the room is something uniquely human touch that may be very difficult to be replaced. I see this very carefully, because I do know that some people think that may also be replaced. But I think the human touch, the meaningful conversation, is something you still want also one-on-one or in groups. But let's say following up on a therapy session as a psychologist, or you're making your notes, or providing education before the therapy session starts. All these tasks can be easily outsourced to technology. And that's kind of how we also look in the company. What will be the human touch?
Of course, this very youthful outlook here, the masks that I've been working here for a very long time. So when I started out at PwC, we still had typing rooms where people would type up the memos. And we still had libraries, with really large libraries with books. And people don't believe me in my teams, but I tell them I started and we didn't have any internet. Internet was I can even still change the paper in a telefax machine, and people don't even know what that is anymore. So the speed of the developments is really fast, but internet, no internet, we've already had very impactful changes in our working lives. And have we been employing fewer people? No, we are very resourceful as people, so we will adapt and evolve. I'm confident of that. And if you look at it more agnostically from a macroeconomical level, and you look at the Netherlands, we will for the next 100 years have a shortage of people to increase our productivity. So for me, that fear is not a rational fear, but it is a true fear that people have, and especially our younger people. So as an employer, you need to address this. And again, simply by having those discussions, that helps. And at the same time, life has become very complex for a lot of young people.
Moving away a little bit from this topic, I want to end with two more questions. One, I promised the listeners as well to touch upon the award you won last year. Can you tell a little bit about that, what it means to you and what you've done to get that reward?
The last part of your question is a difficult one because I was not in the jury.
Okay.
But I do believe by being bringing my whole self in a visible way to the workplace. So we had the startup question. Everybody knows I'm openly gay, but also having those discussions on struggles, etc. So just opening up the dialogue of what it means and being visible. I think that's a strong part of it. And I do some mentorships with talents cross company. So probably that has something to do with it. I'm also a board member of Human Rights Watch, and one of the tasks is also about engaging in ensuring human rights for all sorts of minorities throughout the world based on gender or beliefs or what you have. So that's probably, I would hope, something they weighed in. And what it means to me, I was there with my wife that evening, and when you're nominated, I mean, I work at PwC. I want to win the prize. If they nominate you, want to win the prize. That's the DNA. But we had a table with all my colleagues who are part of the network, who invest a lot of their personal time to arrange for all these events, because it's in many cases on top of the work that they already do, because they are so committed to that. And to see their pride that we, because it's me as a person on the award, but effectively it's an award for all the work that we're doing with the network. That was, I think, so there's this Oscar moment where they open the envelope and then say, okay, and the winner is, and then the whole table exploded. And not me. I was just thinking, okay, good, go back to the office and say I won the award. But it's just to see that recognition for the network that was most important for me.
For the people who are not in the room, but it brings a smile to my face, so that I think also says something on what it means to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last question. What future goals do you have for furthering workplace well-being at PwC?
Now, I want to be even more along the line in terms that people see it as that they are empowered to work on their well-being, but also feel responsible for their own well-being as part of what we expect from them as a professional. And thus linking it more and more to the high-performing teams. And within that context, also appreciate that everybody who works somewhere will have their top times in life, and everybody will have their adversities, whether it's sickness or whether it's sickness in their environment, or whether it's just not feeling on top of your game. Could be hormones, whatever it is. Just accepting that employer and that environment is also there to bring you back to where you want to be.
Is there one specific thing you're working on now to make that the first step into that direction, or the next step into that direction?
No, I mean, one of our main concerns are young parents who are still struggling with everything outside the walls of PwC, but also internally. I think Dutch society is a quaint society. We still have very old thoughts about parenthood and how things should be divided between men and women, but also we're not very on the forefront, if I can say it like that. I think that's really for us top of mind. What can we do with time arrangements, but also creating more flexibility so people feel more empowered to balance those two, young parenthood and working at PwC.
I know, Gijs, you're a parent of 2 young children. Maybe a nice close word from your end. What do you do to balance that out?
Yeah, first, I think what I really like is to see the well-being as an integral part of leadership. I also bring that back to our company, I would say. In our company, we have the value we care for each other. So I also think it's something you can really use the group for to develop well-being. So I'm also inspired by this conversation. In terms of 2 young children, yes, I have a daughter of 4-year-old and a son of almost 3. I really recognize that the system is a bit traditional, to be honest. Also, the times are traditional and what's expected of parents. I'm in the lucky position that I'm pretty flexible in my agenda. I mean, I have a lot of autonomy as well as a leader of a company. So, of course, it's pressureful and taxing, but I can also make myself available. So on Mondays, I pick up my daughter from school and I go to the swimming lesson, for instance. And I really value that. So in terms of living up to your own values, I think balancing that is so important, because if I feel a good father on that Monday, I also feel stronger to be the leader of the company on Tuesday. So yeah, for me, it's really an integral part of my well-being. And for instance, every morning I make breakfast for the family. And that's also a very important moment for me to get energy for the day. So yeah, for me, it's really a vital part of my well-being.
What I hear in there is to find these moments. It can be small, it can be big, to boost that energy and that confidence of being a father or mother.
And I also don't want to be like, this is a bit traditional, but in the old days, you often had also absent parents. They were not available. They were there, but they were often absent. They were working. And when I look back at this very intense period of building up a company, I also want to look back at them, but I also experienced everything at home. Not everything, that's impossible. but you know what I mean.
There's some things.
Yeah,
to be honest, there were some meetings where I stayed a little bit longer, so that we already went to bed. But I think translating it, but going back to your question, I think instilling trust in people that they feel empowered to take that hour.
Yeah.
Because they will. I mean, at the same time that they are accountable for what they do. So probably when you take the hour, you pick up the slack somewhere else during the day, and that's, I think, that people feel that empowerment and feel that organization of trust around them. I think that's my challenge to make sure that's we bring that a notch further.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much both for your time, for the inspiring conversation and the honest answers. Like I said, we will be bringing an episode like this every month. I hope to bring much more valuable insights to the podcast. I'm looking forward to have more conversations, Gijs and Janet. Maybe in the future we'll have you another time as a guest to deep dive on the journey you're on.
I will make some time whenever the new podcasts are out to make sure I stay in the loop.
Exactly. Cool. All right. I want to thank the listeners. And remember, let's open up in the workplace together. See you next time.